Thanks for showing up, John.
You're welcome.
Yes, showing up is about uncovering what it takes to get to where we want to go by learning across the different fields of design, business, tech, and the arts. So welcome to season 2 under the capsule, punching above your weight.
All right, wow. Okay.
I think that's a very perfect heading for you, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe you can do a quick introduction of yourself to the audience.
Sure. I'm John. I founded this Humid House. We are a botanical design studio, and a lot of people don't know what that is, and we are still kind of like defining what that is. But very, very broadly, we work with living media, living material, any like plants, flowers, or anything that was once living, like even like natural materials, wood, even rocks actually. And we use that across a lot of different applications. So from designing weddings and like even a little tiny boutonniere to then working on even like very large scale landscape projects and even like landscape master plans, for example. So it's a really, really broad spectrum. And I'm really happy to say that like we're fairly integrated in that sense, right? Like in terms of creative discussions, designers across the board, we don't really differentiate, right? We have floral designers, we have designers that are more invested in landscape, but creatively, there is that kind of synergy that happens across all the different applications. Yeah, so that's what I do.
Yeah, it's a cool outfit.
Yeah, it's a little bit unexpected.
Yeah, very nice. So maybe I'll just get the ball rolling by asking you the first question.
Okay.
So as a creative, how do you like articulate your vision?
That's a great question. I think the only thing you have to do is just articulate. Like a lot of the time, it's not articulated. So I think the entire battle is actually just to like talk about it, right? And so, and as a creative, like one of the things that I've realized that is like, and you're so kind of efficient, right? In terms of like from a thought to execution, if you're doing everything by yourself, it's a closed loop. But when you're managing a team and like you're doing things that you can't do by yourself, like, you know, it's just impossible, right? So I've really learned to just talk and just explain. I think that's the only thing that you have to do actually. Yeah, talk and explain.
Like for your clients and working partners, right? So they come to you with a project idea and you have a vision, right?
Yes.
And how do you convey a vision that has not been manifested yet in as clearly as possible? Do you do it through words? You spoke about you talking about it, but do they get it? Like, how do you paint that picture?
So oftentimes, like, and I feel like this is most effective, is if it's very a lot of the work we do is quite site related, right? So I find it's actually most effective to present at the site that you're actually going to be at. So then, you know, I'm literally like there with my deck, I'm explaining things to the client, but I also have like a laser pointer and like we have measuring tape. And so it's just like, oh, we think it's going to happen there. And so like, it's a combination of my words and my explanation, my articulation, the deck, but also being in that space. And then like pointing things out and like having like points of reference, scale references, all those things. Yeah, so I think that's all very helpful. As a practice, we actually avoid doing like renders. we try to get by without doing as many renders as we can. Like, you know, we try to get by with being as sketchy as we can. And the reason why is not because we're like lazy or anything. It's just because we just don't want to have our hands tied. And the nature of our job with living materials, sometimes with cut flowers, sometimes with plants, is that you really don't know what you will get when you have to do it, right? A lot of things change. You can plan all you want, but you may not be able to get what you want. And so it's very useful to be like as sketchy as possible in your presentations, but with the intention of a few possibilities, maybe mentally, but only communicating a few relevant ones to the client, yeah.
Does the client come to you with like a clear objective in mind, or it tends to be very vague and then you have to fill in the gap or you have to feel things out? Or do you paint a picture that is still somewhat evolving Like, how does it work, in particular in your trade?
Wow, that's a really good question, and like it's never the same answer, and it's like a weird dance that we do, right? And then you have to like find like see what your dance partner is into, and then dance with them. I mean, it really is kind of like figuring that out. I would say that best case scenario is when the client has some idea, and the client knows, okay, maybe it's a private client, maybe it's their wedding, maybe it's a corporate client, and maybe they have an idea already of what it's supposed to be like, but then are not totally locked into tying our hands, right? It's like please, like, you know, like, and the worst is like when, you know, like they just get a reference and they say, hey, just like exactly like this, then it's like, you know, what's kind of the point. That's very definitive, right? I mean, they're actually giving you a reference to kind of copy. But then that kind of, yeah, that definitely ties our hands. So I really, to answer the question, it's really different every time. Yeah, but we work best when there's like a level of trust, an inkling from the client, a sense of what they want, and then the license to do what we want, like what we propose best. Yeah.
Sounds like a fun game.
Yeah, yeah. Tiring sometimes, but fun. Yeah.
So so by far, what do you think is the most difficult skill that you have acquired as a founder of this very new sort of concept design?
I don't know, accounting skills. I don't know, because I never had to do that before, or like read a balance sheet. But I would say it really is communication, and part of communication is articulation. And I really like that that's a question that we open with. I think that is a lot easier said than done, you know? Every day I'm forced to communicate abstract things that are maybe not even fully formed in my head. And I've learned to do it in a way, even when it's not. You know, I've learned to not be so protective over it. And I've learned to have a team that understands also that sometimes when I communicate these ideas, they're not fully formed, and it's not a command or whatever. It's just a feeling. And I say it exactly as that. I have a weird feeling about something, or like I have a gut intuition about something, or yeah. And using feeling words actually is very helpful.
Do you describe a lot of your works in emotions, like, or do you describe them in pictures, or do you describe them in journeys? Like, how do you describe?
People don't realize. I mean, maybe they do, but like actually the work that we do is very emotional. People have cried after making something. Like people cry after like seeing what their colleagues have made. I mean, like it is because you know, with color and what we do, and you know, we make things like, you know, and it can be in the scale of like, you know, like an arrangement or an installation to even like a landscape. It is definitely emotional. And I think when we deal with color, you know, I'm trained as an architect, and you know, in a lot of the firms that I worked at, there is such hesitation with color. It's such a problematic thing. And when I first started doing this too, like I was like, oh, let's stick to white, you know, and now, oh, I hate purple or whatever. I mean, like, you know, and now it's just like open game, you know. And I feel like because of that, like even the emotional lives of the people that I work with, because we work so much with color, it's like kind of like unlocked in a way. And so it's definitely emotional. Yeah.
This might be a less common question, but
yeah.
Because you work with live media, and by definition, that means very unpredictable. Right? Things comes in different forms.
Sure. Yeah.
From what you envision. Now, perhaps you can help us describe a very tough day.
Yes.
That you almost give up.
Wow.
And how did you push through?
I feel like this happens very regularly, but I think what is different is the give up portion. I think there's a bit of more resilience there, I would say. One of my first, I think my first big wedding was the toughest, really the toughest, because I've never done something like that before. And the reality check of like having no sleep for like 36 hours, and then finally the event happened, like, you know, been preparing, and then, you know, you have like the 14-foot trucks that are rolling in with the trees, and, you know, and like your team is like half dead, and like you don't know where is what, and then you're sweating till you get abrasion marks. I mean, at that point, and you're like, and you know what? They open it up, and like it's the wrong thing that came, and you're like, oh my God, right? So I mean, this actually happens more regularly than one might think. But I think it's just dealing with it, right? And so, like I tell my team now, like I think our minds are just constantly just like calibrating, right? And so like with every curveball, it's like a whole bunch of new data points, right? And then you just have to land somewhere like that, you know, in the trajectory that is kind of where you want it to be. Yeah. So with every curveball, it's like dee, and you're just like, oh, adjusting. And it's like, okay, this color is wrong, so then maybe okay, fine. Then because this color is wrong, then like let's exclude this other color. Let's limit our variables here, and then you come up with something. Yeah. So it's critical design thinking on the fly. Yeah.
So you talk about your team, right? And you know, in most businesses, as founders, we may not know everything.
Yes.
So how do you let your team like take risks, or do you like hold them accountable?
Oh, for sure. So I think I always say this. It's like I will never fault you for not knowing anything, but I'll fault you for not asking for resources or knowledge or help. Like if it's the course that you need to go to get to somewhere, no problem, right? But yeah, it's just a matter of like just like speaking up and being very transparent with them. Yeah. If you don't know, say you don't know. It's fine.
Obviously, the team is really important. What would be your favorite interview question?
Oh, okay. My favorite, I always ask this, do you have an emotional connection with things that you make? Or in our context especially, do you actually have an emotional connection with nature? I think that's really, really critical. I think fundamentally if that is missing in what we do, it's really not worth it. Yeah. So I think people who like teeter around and appreciate it on an abstract level, but you can tell that it hasn't really penetrated. I'm less inclined to have them carry on because like it's not, for all the sweat and tears, there needs to be that emotional payload.
What would be the best answer that you have received and the worst answer that you have received?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I think a lot of people who try to intellectualize things then, like, you're like, or like the answer in a very skewed or oblique or like a weird way, then, you know, they're not transparent with their feelings, right? And I think the best one is just like a full-throated, no hesitation, like, yeah, of course, you know, it's just like, yeah, and you can see it. And then like look at my portfolio, like look at this, and you know, like every day, like I look at things around me, and I'm just like stunned and amazed. Like, I think that needs to be there. That kind of almost like a sense of wonderment. Yeah.
So when you hire someone, right? I mean, some of us are quite sucky in hiring. How do you put together like your superpower team or something?
That's also like something I'm trying to figure out. I'm definitely not an expert, right? But I think, and obviously like you need to like, I think we hire knowing that we might make a mistake. It's definitely not foolproof. And for me, it's just like, okay, right now, I mean like, yeah, I could like hypothetically, you know, like spot a weakness and then project into the future, but then also like untested. So like, come in just like for a couple of weeks, let's just see. And then I think it's very hard in one interview to suss people out like that. And obviously like if they're red flags or like if they're green flags, like, you know, then for sure, like, you know, follow your intuition. But if you're like, I think the hardest one is when you're on the fence, right? That's always the hardest. It's like, could be, couldn't be. And I was just like, okay, fine, just put them through BMT. Like just come in here and like, let's see after 2 weeks, yeah.
So I have this quote, and I would love your response on it. If you really look closely, most overnight successes took a long time.
You know, when I first started, my brother told me like, wow, actually like, you took a long time to get the weird triangulation of like skills that you need to like do what you do. You know, and I think that's absolutely right. I mean like, I had to have gone to architecture school. I had to have designed on a very large scale. Like, you know, I had to like not be afraid of like structures or hanging things or like load, like, you know, I can, you know, like load calculations. So like all these submissions, I had to like had some practice with social media, you know, like to get an idea of I liked and what I didn't like. I needed to like be into photography for a while. I needed like, you know, I also needed to like have gone to did drama in school so that I know theater. I mean, like it's like and like suddenly I also know lighting. And so like it's like a weird triangulation. Oh yeah, and also like interested in plants, and then flowers from a young age, and then like the gardening. So like it's like a weird, yeah. So it's a weird. It was a weird process to get.
But everything adds up, right?
It all adds up. It definitely did. Yeah, and the people that I work with are all like that. Yeah, I mean like. Very rarely, like very few designers that we work with wanted to work with flowers from day one. Everyone has had experience in other areas, and I find that very necessary because you needed to develop, we actually rely on their other experiences. And actually this is, you know, in interviews, I actually ask people where they travel, what they've seen. Do they have a sense of a space, of a place, for example, like, and people who have like, you know, who have been abroad, like they understand what it means to like when something feels temperate, you know, like just like looking at plants, like does it feel like you need that, right? It's very hard from pictures just to know that. So exposure is like really, really important. Yeah, and I like ask a whole bunch of random questions just to get an understanding of where people are at. Yeah.
It's like almost this vocabulary that
yes,
you have. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Picked out.
Yeah.
Obviously, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, we all live by our own sort of set of beliefs and rules. What is that one golden rule that you apply to yourself, like religiously? This is something that is about me. This is important. This is how I run the day, or this is how I do certain things. Is there a certain set of rule that you apply quite religiously?
I think. I think for me, and I certainly have infected my team with this, I really think it's about like, what can you live with what you made today? And it's awful because sometimes obviously you don't and you feel like shit, right? But then also like you live for another day to fight another day, right? So I really think it's about that primary integrity to like the things that you make something special. Like I don't want to hear an excuse like this is very corporate, so let's just do something corporate. Like what does that mean? You know, like make it work for yourself. Yeah.
You spoke about hardship. Is it something quite physical?
Yeah, it's a lot of physical labor. It is. Yeah, it's like 95% manual labor and like a lot of like logistics and, you know, and really like the arrangement part of it, the making part is like a fraction of all of that, right? And a lot of people come in the doors having a very like romantic idea of what we do, and I can guarantee you that like, no, it's not. Like, and they will find out like within a week that, you know, and yeah, and it's for some it's horrific. Like, yeah, like don't show up in heels.
Do you have any quotes in the office that you think is really important?
I don't think there's a quote. Oh wait, there is one quote. Wait, yeah. It's actually on the door of our studio. I just remembered. It's actually from a Mary Oliver poem, and it says, "Every day I hear or see something that more or less kills me with delight." And I put it there because it reminds us of like the primary kind of our first love, which is like why we're doing this is because actually there are all these things that are amazing and beautiful that we see, and we want to work with, right? I think that really is intrinsically the primary thing, and I think, you know, as tired as we are, going into a second project, right? You need to find that thing that like keeps it going for you. But the other thing that annoys the shit out of people in our studio is overused words. And I've had this complaint because people like, we use it so much, like words like, oh, that's like, there's so much movement in that, or like, there's so much like, it's so dynamic, or it's very, oh, that's so sculptural. And then people start using it at home, and then, you know, like Francoise, like her kids are just like, every time you say that, you pay us $10. Yeah.
I think that's one that I quite like, which is actually in response to yours, is whenever we set a goal,
yeah,
there will be obstacles.
Sure.
Right? So kind of like...
expect it.
yes, very difficult, passionate goals that we set for ourselves creatively. There will always be this obstacle, whether you go over it, under it, or around it, you have to figure out, and it will be there. I think for me, if I have that as a mindset, when it happens,
Right.
and it will,
Yeah.
I can handle it.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. It's like the equivalent of like brace.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for making time to show up today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
But we'd like you to also share some final thoughts before we wrap this up. Any things that you want to advise or share before we say goodbye?
Sure. So I think I struggle a lot with perfectionism, right? And I think, it's so interesting. I actually ask people that I interview, like, are you a perfectionist? And actually when they start sputtering and they go like, and you can like, yeah, obviously you are, right? And then like for us, like there really needs to be like kind of that weird balance, because otherwise like you'll never get anything done. Also, like you'll be so defeated if you don't do well one day, and then like it's gonna affect your mood. And like, so I think as creative professionals, like that's always like on my mind. Like what is your, like, it's not so much a ending thought, but like what is your relationship with perfectionism, for example? Do you even have it, or are you able to like let go of things really easily?
I struggle a lot with that because I am a perfectionist.
Yeah.
OCD, classic case. But I think over the years, I've learned to let go. Even having to be a life partner of someone else, you need to compromise on certain things. So that is a learning, step that I have to make. And then when you move into a place where you have to manage a team,
yes,
no one's gonna be the same level as you.
Yes.
So you need to let go, and you need to have faith.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's something I learned along the way, my journey as well. So, yeah.
Letting go.
Letting go.
Yeah. It's
Elsa.
the title of your next podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for having me again.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.